Isaiah 40:28 says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable." In history, there's two men who exemplify what this verse has to say. Their names are Wilbur and Orville Wright, and you've probably heard of them because they are the men who invented the first manned, heavier-than-air flying machine. Back in the 1700s, mankind first began to fly. They used hot air balloons, they used kites, and they used gliders. But none of those things are good for going place to place. Wilbur and Orville's father was a preacher, and their mother came from a family of carriage makers. Both boys learned a lot from their parents. From their father, they learned about Christianity. From their mother, they learned about mechanics, as well as some arts and crafts. Their father traveled from church to church, and as he traveled, he'd often get the boys gifts and presents. One day, he brought home a whirligig. A whirligig is a silly little toy that, when spun, flies like a helicopter. Wilbur and Orville fell in love with it, and in fact, they played with it so much that they broke their toy. Instead of being discouraged and moving on to something else, the boys decided that they were going to build their own whirligig. They spent hours perfecting their machine, tailoring the gears and the system so that it could fly higher and even further than the gift that their father brought home. The boys, as well, learned as much as they could about flight. One of their favorite men was a man named Otto Lilienthal, an avid glider pilot. But one day, Otto was in a terrible accident and died. The boys were discouraged, but still they didn't give up. They were both Christians. Neither of them drank or smoked or even gambled. Will wanted to be a preacher, but one day when he was playing hockey, he broke his front teeth, and from then on he spoke with a lisp. Not a good thing for a preacher to have. Orville, on the other hand, loved mechanics. One time he rebuilt a printing press, and once he did that, he printed out pamphlets and brochures for the churches that his father preached at. In fact, he was so good at mechanics that he was able to open up his own bicycle shop and his own newspaper shop. Both Orville and Wilbur loved working in both of the shops, fiddling with contraptions, especially with bikes. But still, their one true love was flight. They began to build their own kites and gliders, challenging one another to see whose could travel the furthest in the air before touching down. Wilbur looked for inspiration from nature, from God's creation. He would spend hours out in the fields with binoculars, watching birds fly, trying to learn their secrets so he could apply them to his own flying machines. And one day while he was watching, he noticed something interesting. Birds, when they fly, don't keep their wings perfectly stiff and straight. Instead, in flight, they flex them. And this allows them to control the things that you talked about today: pitch, roll, and yaw. This was the secret, the flexible and movable wing. The boys got to work immediately. They built themselves a wind tunnel and conducted experiment after experiment in it. Some were great successes, others terrible failures. But the boys never gave up. Soon the wind tunnel wasn't enough. It didn't provide enough lift for them. So the boys hired someone to watch their bicycle shop and moved to the windy beaches of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And that's where, on December 17th, 1903, it finally happened. With Orville at the controls and Wilbur watching from a hilltop nearby taking notes, Orville was able to fly the first manned, heavier-than-air flying machine. In 12 seconds, he was able to travel 120 feet in the air. After he landed, he did it again, and again, and again. Orville and Wilbur Wright had succeeded. There was no news coverage. There was no fanfare. The boys quietly and humbly packed up their flying machine. They knew that they needed to do more work. They knew that their job was not done yet. But more important than that, they knew that Christ was their Lord and Savior, and they knew that He had a plan for their lives. Through faith, determination, and perseverance, Orville and Wilbur Wright, and other men and women like them, we have been able to travel through the skies. God has given us the secrets of flight, and we now use them to travel from place to place, moving not only people, but also cargo. You know, we can learn a lot from Orville and Wilbur Wright's life. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. We hear that in the book of Hebrews. Well, the Wright brothers had faith in flight, and they persevered until they were able to unlock the secrets of it. It was far more important that they had faith in God. They understood that God had a calling for them. They understood that God was in control of their lives. Their faith in God remained strong even when things went wrong, even when their hero died, even when their contraptions didn't work correctly. Still, they had faith in God. They realized that faith is not changeable like the weather. Faith is not an emotion that we feel here. Faith is often an action. Faith is having perseverance through all sorts of circumstances, not just the times that we succeed, but also the times that we fail. So in our lives, when things aren't going right, when it seems like everything is going wrong, we can have faith by persevering.
Hey guys, it's great to be with you tonight for our Continental kickoff. And tonight we're going to be learning about flight and faith. And our verse for tonight comes from Isaiah 40:31. Can you say that? Isaiah 40:31. So, the verse goes like this, repeat after me. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Great, all right. Let's repeat that all together now. Isaiah 40:31. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. Good job, guys. Hey, do you know what the most used passenger airplane in the world is? It's the Boeing 737. This plane is 130 feet long. It has a wingspan of 113 feet and weighs in at 91,300 pounds. But wait, the plane, plus passengers and cargo, weighs in at 174,170 pounds. That's 17 and a half elephants. How much faith does it take, how much trust does it take to believe that you can float 17 elephants in midair? And yet, people climb into these monsters every day and happily fly from one city or country to another without a problem. Why? Because they believe they're safe. They believe in the science. They believe in the technology. But actually, they believe in God's creation. They believe that the way God created the universe and our world will not change. That creation is not random. The laws of gravity and aerodynamics will not change. And because God is consistent and his creation is consistent, the Wright brothers figured out how they could fly a powered aircraft on December 17, 1903. Wilbur Wright flew 120 feet for 12 seconds, reaching a height of 20 feet. Today, a Boeing 737 can carry 180 people and tons of cargo, almost 3,600 miles, flying for around 8 hours at 39,000 feet above the earth. Why? Because the same laws that God put into place at creation apply to the Wright brothers, the Boeing 737, and all other aircraft. Do you have something unbreakable sitting by your computer? Pick it up. Anything will do. Okay, ready? Drop it. What happens? It falls to the ground. Why does that happen? Gravity. Exactly. So pick it up again. Drop it. Pick it up again. Drop it. Falls to the ground every time. Okay, everybody stand up. Stand up. Come on. All right. Jump up in the air. What happens? Do it again. Do it again. The same thing happens every time. Okay, you can sit down now. That's God's law of gravity that ensures we don't go floating off into space. So how does a plane that weighs 174,000 pounds stay 39,000 feet up in the air for 8 hours? I mean, it's crazy when you really think about it. It should fall like a rock. The reason is God's law of aerodynamics. So what in the world is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. The actual definition is the interaction between the air and solid bodies moving through it. So what the heck does that mean? Well, it's really easy to understand when you know two things. First, anything with weight is affected by gravity. We just proved that by jumping up and down. Every object on Earth falls to the ground unless there is something that counters the pull of gravity, and that's called lift. A balloon has weight, so if we drop it, it falls to the ground. Now, if we take that same balloon and we blow it up, now if we drop it, it still falls to the ground. But if we take that balloon and we fill it up with helium, what happens? The helium's lighter than air and it floats. That is lift. Planes can fly because the shape of their wing causes lift. As a wing moves through the air on top of the wing moves faster than the air under the wing, causing it to lift. Second, when you stick your hand out the window of your car, what happens? The air tries to push it back, right? That's called drag. Now, just like we need lift to counter weight, we also need something to counter drag, and that's called thrust or power. For a plane, that's the engine. So thrust counters drag, causing lift to overcome weight, and the plane flies. Now, just like a plane, we have weights in our lives that pull us down. That's called sin. We also have drag in our lives that slows us down. That's called temptation. We want to fly, but Satan keeps putting more weight on us and drags us further down. Remember our verse from Isaiah 40:31? Say it with me again. Isaiah 40:31. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. So if we want the strength to live life, if we want to fly like an eagle, free as the wind, if we want to run through life with joy and energy, what do we need to do? We need to pay attention to what the Bible tells us. Look at the first line. but they who wait on the Lord. So the key to lift and thrust in our lives is waiting on the Lord. But what does that really mean? Well, waiting on the Lord means having faith. Waiting on the Lord means having trust in Him. Waiting on the Lord means He knows better than I do. He created the world, He created me, He created you, and He gave us Jesus. So God knows how to fly through life. And the cool thing is, He tells us all about how to live life, how to fly, how to have faith in Him, how to trust Him in the Bible. Whenever the weight of this world is heavy on you, whenever the cares and temptations of this world are dragging you down, remember to put you into God's Word and His promise of Isaiah 40:31. But when you trust in the Lord, you shall renew your strength. You shall mount up on wings like eagles. You shall run and not be weary. You shall walk and not be faint. It was great to be with you tonight. I pray that you'll have a great year in Stockade. And remember, let's always be bright and keen for Christ. This is Ranger Bill, out.